Thank you, Hilton, and thanks for having me as part of the day of EA Connect Day today. So I'm Mike Kowalski. I work for Dana-Farber Cancer Institute in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm an enterprise architect there, and my topic today is learning to stand up your enterprise architecture practice. Now, there's many ways we can go about doing this. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how Dana-Farber did its. So Dana-Farber Cancer Institute started in the late 40s, where Dr. Sidney Farber founded the Children's Cancer Research Foundation. He's passionate about finding a cure and treating children with cancer. About 20 years later, that care expanded to adult patients. In 1974, the Institute formally became known as the Sidney Farber Cancer Center in honor of Dr. Farber. And in 1993, after the long-term support of Charles Dana, the Institute became known as the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. Today, we have over 5,000 staff, faculty, and clinicians, over 500,000 annual outpatient visits, and the Institute's equally dedicated to finding a cure for cancer as well as treating folks with cancer. We work with the United States Food and Drug Administration for approval for new cancer therapies. In fact, of the 75 recent therapies approved, Dana-Farber was involved with almost half of them. We've had Nobel Prize winners as recently as last year, and we're in the front lines of the fight with COVID-19. In fact, there was a recent innovation that Dana-Farber had where we had a sterilization lab that was converted to then sterilize the shortage of personal protective equipment that people had in the area. So Dana-Farber stepped up and was able to help right on the front lines of COVID-19. So what was our catalyst for enterprise architecture at Dana-Farber? We had an incumbent information services organization. But a few years ago, we created what was called an informatics organization. So the idea was to get closer to our researchers and optimize their resources. One of the things we did not want to do is inhibit the creativity and innovation of the researchers, but we wanted to see if we could help them in scaling some of the solutions they were doing. The information services organization already had an established foothold in doing some things, but the informatics organization was decidedly different. We had different competencies. What we needed was a way to communicate with our customers what the information services team was responsible for and what the informatics organization was responsible for. So the informatics organization wanted to create the big picture, and we wanted to create an informatics competency of enterprise architecture. I was tapped to be the enterprise architect, and I said, fine, but I don't know what that means, and I don't know what the big picture is. So we started to assemble a lot of the things that we had across the Institute and consolidate them into one place. It was a very manual process. There was a big interview process that we had to do to talk to the different architects that were in place in different parts of the organization today. What were the different capabilities that the groups had? In fact, that term capability was a new concept to folks too, so we had to talk about what a capability was. We had many different products, we had many different relationships we had to manage, and the relationships that existed between the capabilities and the applications. We had many different users to support. Some of those users were supported by the informatics organization and information services, and there were many different projects that were going on at the time. We tried to do this in a way that leveraged the tools that we already had. So we had Excel, we had PowerPoint, we had Visio, and we did a pretty good job of collecting all the information in the beginning. But as soon as one thing changed or we missed one thing or someone wanted to say, what would happen if this one system went down? We couldn't pivot and answer those questions very agilely. We needed some help and to be able to answer those questions of the day. We needed something to be able to show all of the relationships too. So if we had one picture of capabilities and one picture of our systems, they didn't really connect and they didn't talk to one another. So we couldn't say very easily which applications supported which capabilities. We weren't able to zoom in and out and show the relationships between one another. Finally, we weren't able to produce some very useful views for our customers. So we reached out and we started to take a look at some solutions, and we decided to go with LeanIX after evaluating a bunch of solutions. They provided the best view into our enterprise, into our applications and our capabilities that allowed us to communicate effectively with our customers and internally in informatics about what it is we could do and what the things we could offer. We also love the onboarding experience from LeanIX. Right through pre-sales, before we even made a decision, they helped us with a proof of concept with our information. And after we decided to go with LeanIX, we got great at-the-elbow support from customer success. We're meeting multiple times each week, and then we still have a regular cadence with our customer success team where they're ensuring the things that we're doing are able to produce the views and produce the outcomes that we need. They're also very good at validation too. We might be going down one road and they're good to suggest maybe we should work on these things, maybe we should work on these things. Because there's so many things we can do with enterprise architecture, it's hard to figure out where to start sometimes. They're very good also at helping us assess our EA maturity. One of the questions that Hilton said in the introduction was, where does your organization stand with EA maturity? Dana-Farber did the same thing with us. It was a very humbling experience in the beginning, trying to figure out where exactly we were, but it was honest and it was good assessment. It also allowed us to put things in place to say, okay, here's where we are, here's where we want to be, and put milestones in place to be able to try to achieve more maturity. So after we stood up our EA practice, how are we doing? So in practice, we are definitely reducing our risk by centralizing things. We're working from home indefinitely for a while here at Dana-Farber, the informatics organization is. And now we have a centralized electronic resource that will allow us to answer some questions that we used to answer by walking over and talking to an architect by saying, hey, what's the impact when this system goes down? Or I want to upgrade this system, what's the impact? We now have a centralized resource where we can find that information without having to walk over and talk with someone. We're creating useful views in our deployment. So we now can see where we're oversubscribed and where we're undersubscribed. For example, we have strategic priorities that guide us in everything that we do. We now can see how many applications support those strategic priorities. Are we oversubscribed in one place? Are we undersubscribed in one place? Is that priority even valid for us based on the lack of activity that we're doing? So now we're able to see at a glance where we are under and oversubscribed in things. Hilton and Andre also talked about the ability to help drive strategy because of our bird's eye view of things. And we do have a seat now with the organization by saying, here's the lay of the land. We're able to see which capabilities we have available, which applications we have, how stable they are, how steady they are. And we're helping drive strategy by saying, if we want to do something like that, we do or do not have the capabilities in place to support. And we're engaging the business in new and exciting ways. So we do have a very good relationship, obviously, with our internal team in informatics, but now we're working with the Institute strategy team to try to figure out how we can help them provide views into the things that they're doing. For example, if they set a priority for the entire Institute, how many projects do they have supporting that? How many people do they have supporting that? Is that a valid priority for the Institute, or is it not? So in standing up your e-practice, what I would suggest is make sure you do it in response to a need. The last thing you want to do is go out and select a solution and then try to find uses for it. So if you're looking to try to communicate your different capabilities, applications, your technology risks, which applications may move to the cloud, EA practice and a solution would be good to help with that. And use a solution to help optimize the process. The reason we went out and got our solution was because that we knew we wanted to do enterprise architecture and we were doing a good job at establishing where we were. But we needed a solution to help us automate the process and digitize our assets. Honestly, assess your current state. So when Dana-Farber started to talk with us about how mature or immature our organization was, it was a very humbling experience. But it turned out to be very healthy for us too. We want to definitely do enterprise architecture and help lead and guide the business. And now we have goals that we can put in place to not only measure where we are today, but achieve new things and try to increase our maturity along the way. It's also important to communicate and sell the program enterprise architecture. We recently at Dana-Farber did an exercise in our organization, in our department, and it was an envisioning exercise or a visioning exercise. We asked folks to not hold back. What are the cool things you think we could do? What are the big problems that you think we could achieve? And it's interesting, a lot of the feedback that came back, we were taking a look at it and we said, oh my gosh, we're already doing some of these things, but we're not telling anybody about it. So it's very important to communicate the things that you're working on so folks know that you not only have that capability, but they can be assured that you're working on the things that you think you should be working on. And finally, prove the value to earn the right to help with the next big thing. You heard Andre talk about the enterprise architecture team working on innovation and the things that are happening next. If you can prove the value that you are able to provide utility, provide view into the different capabilities that you have and the applications and the impact that they have, folks are going to appreciate that you do have the enterprise view of things, and then you have the right to work on the next things for innovation. So that was a brief look into what Dana-Farber has done to set up their enterprise architecture. Again, I know it's different in a lot of places, but we have some very modest steps that we took to put in place in our enterprise architecture program, and Dana-Farber was a big part of that.
Thank you very much, Mike, that was really, really interesting. A couple of questions have popped up, and maybe I can put them to you. During your presentation, you mentioned specific milestones you put in place to advance your EA maturity. Could you go into some detail and explain what those were and how you reached those milestones?
Sure. So when we first put into place our EA maturity, we were assessed at a very low level on the scale, and we wanted to advance to the next level. So one of the things that we would do to be able to advance the maturity into the next level is provide useful views into our deployment, what capabilities we have, which applications we have. So we set a target for this year, a modest one, of saying, let's produce 3 new reports or views into our deployment that can be leveraged by leadership to say, here's the things that this organization offers, or here's the things that we do to support this priority. But the very attainable goal, the SMART goal that we have, is to produce 3 new views that will take our maturity from one level to the next level.
Great, thank you. Very interesting, Mike. Another question which has popped up a few times during your talk, what would you describe as the biggest obstacle you and your team had to navigate in the business?
Sure. I think it was very tough to stand up the EA practice in the beginning. There were so many different places we could start, and we read in a lot of places, make sure that you document your current state and know what you have. And other places would say, don't start with your current state. Make sure you start with what your future state wants to look like and try to achieve that. I think our biggest hurdle, though, was getting buy-in from all the different architects that we had. They were operating perfectly and independently before the enterprise architecture practice started. After they started to contribute and saw how their piece contributed to the entire whole of the organization, they really saw the value of enterprise architecture as a competency and how they could not only contribute to it, but help drive it, whether directly or indirectly. And they were also seeing finally that the reliance that people were putting on them and becoming a bottleneck was being alleviated, because we didn't have to walk over to that one architect who happened to be also a historian because they were with the organization for so long, that their questions, the questions that being asked of them, could be asked by another place, and they could be freed up to do the things that they're responsible for. So I think the biggest hurdle actually became one of our advantages, was getting the buy-in from the original architects who are now happy to contribute and help drive the organization.